The rain hammered against the cracked window of the tiny studio apartment in South Brooklyn. Maria wiped her hands on her worn apron, staring at the single pot of rice and beans simmering on the stove. It was Thursday evening, 3 days before her next paycheck from the diner, and this was all she had left. Her daughter Sophia sat at the small folding table, coloring with broken crayons on the back of old receipts. The 6-year-old hummed softly, oblivious to the weight pressing down on her mother's shoulders. Maria's eyes burned with exhaustion. 2 jobs, 16-hour days, and still the rent was late. Again, she had learned not to cry in front of Sophia. Tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. A knock at the door startled them both. Maria's heart jumped. The landlord had already come by twice this week, his threats growing sharper each time. She moved toward the door slowly, her mind racing through excuses she had already used. But when she opened it, she didn't find Mr. Henderson's angry face. Instead, a small girl stood in the hallway, maybe 8 years old, with dark curls falling over her tear-streaked cheeks. Her expensive white dress was dirty at the hem, and her patent leather shoes gleamed despite the grime of the building. Behind her stood a woman in a black suit, phone pressed to her ear, speaking rapid Italian. She barely glanced at Maria. The little girl looked up with enormous brown eyes. Her lip trembled. "I'm hungry," she whispered. "Please, do you have anything?" Maria's instinct was immediate. She stepped aside, pulling the door wider. "Come in, sweetheart." "Of course." The woman in the suit finally looked up, her expression sharp with suspicion. She started to protest, but the little girl had already slipped past Maria into the tiny apartment. Sophia looked up from her coloring, curious but not afraid. The 2 girls stared at each other for a moment. Then Sophia smiled and pushed a crayon across the table. "You can use the red one. It's my favorite." The little girl in the white dress sat down carefully as if she had never sat at a folding table before. She picked up the crayon with delicate fingers. Maria ladled the rice and beans into her only 2 bowls. She divided the portions carefully, giving most of it to the children. The woman in the suit watched everything with cold calculation, still on her phone but no longer speaking. "What's your name, honey?" Maria asked gently, setting the bowls in front of the girls. "Juliana," the girl said quietly. "But everyone calls me Gigi. That's a beautiful name." "I'm Maria and this is Sophia." Gigi ate slowly, her manners impeccable despite her obvious hunger. Sophia shoveled food into her mouth happily, chattering about her day at school, about the butterfly she had seen, about the song her teacher taught them. Maria stood by the stove, her own stomach hollow, watching the 2 girls eat. The woman in the suit finally ended her call and stepped fully into the apartment. Her eyes swept over the peeling wallpaper, the water stain on the ceiling, the single bed in the corner that Maria shared with Sophia. "You gave her your food," the woman said. It wasn't a question, Maria shrugged. "She's a child." She was hungry. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. She pulled out her phone again, typing something quickly. 20 minutes later, another knock came. This time, when Maria opened the door, 3 men in dark suits stood in the hallway. The one in front was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his black hair. His face was carved from stone, all hard angles and dangerous stillness. But when he saw Gigi at the table, his entire expression transformed. "Piccola," he breathed, rushing forward. He dropped to his knees beside his daughter, his hands cupping her face, checking her for injuries. "Where have you been?" "Do you know what you put me through?" Gigi threw her arms around his neck. "I'm sorry, Papa. I got scared when the men were yelling. I ran. I got lost." The man closed his eyes, holding his daughter like she was made of glass. Then he looked up at Maria, and she saw something she didn't expect. Genuine gratitude mixed with careful assessment. "You fed her?" Maria nodded. She was hungry. The man stood slowly, still holding Gigi's hand. He studied Maria for a long moment, taking in her worn clothes, her tired eyes, the bare apartment, Sophia watching with wide eyes from the table. "My name is Domenico Russo," he said quietly, "and I don't forget kindness." 3 days passed, and Maria tried to forget the strange encounter. Men like Domenico Russo didn't exist in her world. She went back to her brutal routine. The morning shift at the diner on Atlantic Avenue, picking up Sophia from the after-school program, then the evening shift cleaning offices in Manhattan until midnight. But on Monday morning, She found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was $5,000 in cash and a business card with only a phone number embossed in black. Maria stared at the money with shaking hands. It was more than she made in 4 months. It could pay her rent for half a year. It could fix the cavity Sophia had been complaining about. It could buy winter coats that actually fit, but she knew better than to accept money from a man like that. She had seen enough mob movies, heard enough stories from the old Italian women who came into the diner. Money like this always came with strings. She tucked the envelope into her purse, planning to return it somehow. That same afternoon, Mr. Henderson was waiting when she came home with Sophia. His face was red with rage, and he had another man with him, someone Maria had never seen before, holding a clipboard. "Your rent is 23 days late, Mrs. Santos, that's it. I've got new tenants who can actually pay. You have 72 hours to vacate." Sophia clutched Maria's hand tighter, sensing the danger even if she didn't understand the words. "Please, Mr. Henderson. I get paid Friday. I can give you half then and the rest next week, I swear." The landlord cut her off with a sharp laugh. "You said that last month. And the month before? I'm done with your promises. 72 hours or I call the marshals." Maria felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She had nowhere to go. No family in New York. No friends who could take in a woman and a child. The shelters were full, and the waiting lists stretched for months. That night she sat at the folding table after Sophia fell asleep, the envelope of cash in front of her. Her pride screamed at her not to use it, but Sophia's soft breathing from the bed, the eviction notice taped to the door, the emptiness in the refrigerator, it all pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. She reached for the phone. The next morning, a black SUV pulled up in front of her building. The woman in the suit from before stepped out, her expression unreadable behind designer sunglasses. "Mr. Russo would like to speak with you." It wasn't a request. Maria dropped Sophia at school. Her stomach twisted with anxiety and climbed into the SUV. They drove to Red Hook, to a warehouse near the waterfront that looked abandoned from the outside. Inside it was transformed. Expensive furniture, art on the walls, armed men stationed at every entrance. Domenico sat behind a massive desk reviewing papers. When Maria entered, he stood immediately, gesturing to a chair. "You tried to return the money." Maria lifted her chin. "I don't take charity. It's not charity. It's a debt. You fed my daughter when you had nothing. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't want anything in return. Do you understand how rare that is in my world?" Maria said nothing. She didn't trust herself to speak. Domenico leaned forward. "I've made inquiries about you, Mrs. Santos. Single mother, 2 jobs. Never late on rent until your hours got cut at the diner 6 months ago. Your daughter has perfect attendance at school despite everything. You're exactly the kind of person who deserves help. I just need time to... You're being evicted, I know. Your landlord is a predator who charges twice the legal rent, because he knows people like you have no choice." Maria's face burned with shame. The reality of her situation laid bare by a stranger, even a generous one, felt like being stripped naked. "Here's what's going to happen," Domenico continued. His voice was calm but absolute. "You're going to accept my help, not because you're weak, but because you were kind to my daughter when it cost you everything. There's an apartment in Park Slope, 2 bedrooms. Already paid for a year. The lease is in your name." Maria's breath caught. Park Slope? That was a neighborhood she had only walked through on her way to the subway, admiring the brownstones and tree-lined streets she'd never be able to afford. "I can't possibly." "You can. And you will." Domenico's eyes hardened slightly. "I don't make offers twice, Mrs. Santos. My daughter hasn't stopped talking about Sophia, about how she shared her crayons, about how safe she felt in your home. That matters to me more than you understand." Maria moved into the Park Slope apartment on a gray Saturday morning. When she opened the door, she had to steady herself against the frame. Hardwood floors gleamed under the sunlight streaming through tall windows. The kitchen had granite countertops and appliances that actually worked. There were 2 bedrooms, too, with real beds already set up, covered in crisp white linens. Sophia ran through the room squealing with delight, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Mama, Mama, look! I have my own room! There's a park across the street. Can we go to the park?" Maria sank onto the couch, overwhelmed. She had spent so many years fighting, scraping, surviving. She didn't know how to accept something good without waiting for it to be ripped away. That evening, there was a knock at the door. Maria opened it to find Gigi standing there, holding her father's hand. The little girl wore jeans and a pink sweater, looking more like a regular child than the terrified princess in the white dress. "Can Gigi play with Sophia?" Domenico asked. "If it's not too much trouble." Maria stepped aside, and the girls immediately ran to Sophia's new room, their laughter spilling through the apartment. Domenico lingered in the doorway, his expression softer than she had seen before. "Thank you for accepting the apartment." Maria crossed her arms, still uncomfortable. "I still don't understand why you're doing this, because good people shouldn't suffer for being good." Domenico's voice was quiet. "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Since then, Gigi has been surrounded by bodyguards, tutors, people who are paid to care about her. But when she got scared and ran and ended up at your door, you didn't see a stranger's child. You saw a hungry little girl. You gave her the only food you had." Maria's throat tightened. Any mother would have done the same. No, they wouldn't. Trust me on that. Over the following weeks, an unexpected routine developed. Gigi's bodyguards would drop her off at the apartment after her private lessons, and she would spend the afternoon with Sophia. The girls became inseparable, doing homework together, playing in Prospect Park, teaching each other Italian and Spanish words. Maria went back to work at the diner, but only the morning shift now. The evening office cleaning job she let go. For the first time in 6 years, she had dinner with her daughter. She helped with homework. She read bedtime stories. She remembered what it felt like to breathe. Domenico came to pick up Gigi each evening. At first, he stayed only a moment at the door. Then he started accepting Maria's offers of coffee. Then he started arriving early, sitting at the kitchen table while the girls played, talking about everything and nothing. Maria learned that he had taken over his father's business at 22, that he had never wanted this life but felt trapped by loyalty and blood. She learned that he read poetry, that he donated anonymously to children's hospitals, that he lay awake at night terrified something would happen to Gigi. He learned that Maria had come from El Salvador at 17, that Sophia's father had disappeared before she was born, that she had worked 3 jobs while pregnant just to afford the hospital bill. He learned that she could quote Gabriel Garcia Marquez from memory, that she had dreamed of becoming a teacher before survival became her only goal. One evening in late November, after the girls had fallen asleep watching a movie, Maria and Domenico sat in her small kitchen. Rain tapped against the windows. He had loosened his tie, looking more tired than she had ever seen him. "I want to offer you a job," he said suddenly, "managing one of my legitimate businesses. A restaurant in Tribeca. Good salary, benefits, normal hours." Maria set down her coffee cup carefully. "Domenico, I appreciate everything, but I can't be in your debt forever. This has to stop somewhere. This isn't about debt anymore." His dark eyes held hers. "You're brilliant with people. You make everyone in the diner feel seen. You've organized Gigi's entire playroom in a way that my housekeeper couldn't manage in 3 years. And Sophia needs stability. So does Gigi. They need each other. And maybe—" He stopped, the unfinished sentence hanging between them. "Maybe we need each other too," Maria finished quietly. If you're rooting for Maria and this unexpected new chapter in her life, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will change everything, and you won't want to miss it. Maria started at the Tribeca restaurant in December. Osteria Luna was elegant but warm, the kind of place where Wall Street executives ate beside young couples celebrating anniversaries. The staff was skeptical at first, another boss's friend given a position she didn't earn, but Maria proved herself within days. She reorganized the reservation system, trained new servers with patience and precision, and remembered every regular customer's preferences. Within a month, revenue had increased by 30%. The head chef, a temperamental man from Naples, actually smiled when she walked into the kitchen. Sophia thrived too. Her grades improved. She joined the school choir. She stopped asking why they used to move so much, why they used to eat rice and beans for dinner every night. The worry lines that had creased her small forehead began to fade, but in January everything shifted. Maria was closing the restaurant late one Thursday when 3 men in suits walked in. Not Domenico's men. She could tell by the way they moved, predatory and cold. The lead man had a scar running down his left cheek. We're looking for Domenico Russo. He owes our boss a conversation. Maria kept her voice steady. This is a restaurant, not a meeting place. We're closed. The scarred man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're the one he's been spending time with. The cleaning lady who got lucky. Tell him Vincent Calabrese wants his territory back. Tell him we know about his little girl. About her new playmate, the threat was clear. Maria felt ice flood her veins, but she didn't flinch. Get out. Now. After they left, she called Domenico immediately. He arrived within 10 minutes, his face darker than she had ever seen it. When she told him what happened, he slammed his fist on the bar, making glasses rattle. I should have known Vincent would try something. He's been circling for months. Who is he? Old rival. Thinks I'm weak since my father died. Thinks he can take what's mine. Domenico's jaw tightened. I need to handle this tonight. And Maria, you and Sophia need to stay away from Gigi until this is resolved. Maria grabbed his arm. No, you can't separate them. Gigi will think she did something wrong. Sophia will be heartbroken. It's too dangerous. Then end it. Maria's voice was fierce. You told me good people shouldn't suffer. Those girls are innocent. So handle it. Be the man you told me you wish you could be instead of the one you think you have to be. Something shifted in Domenico's expression. He studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Set up a meeting with Calabrese. Tomorrow. Neutral ground. Tell him I'm ready to negotiate. But when he hung up, his eyes were hard as granite. He wasn't planning to negotiate at all. The meeting happened at dawn in an empty warehouse in Sunset Park. Domenico arrived with 4 of his men. Vincent Calabrese brought twice as many, his scar catching the early light filtering through broken windows. Maria wasn't supposed to be there, but she had followed in a taxi, staying hidden behind a stack of old shipping containers. She needed to see how this ended. She needed to know if the man she was falling for would choose violence or something else. Vincent spoke first, his voice dripping with contempt. You've gone soft, Russo, playing house with some poor waitress and pretending you're a legitimate businessman. Your father would be ashamed. Domenico's expression remained calm. My father built an empire on fear. I watched it destroy him from the inside. I'm building something different. Different? Vincent laughed. You're building nothing. You're weak. And weakness in our world gets you killed. Maybe. Domenico pulled out a folder from his jacket, tossing it onto the crate between them. Or maybe I'm just smarter than you think. Vincent opened the folder, his face darkening as he flipped through pages. Financial records, photographs, recorded conversations, evidence of every illegal operation Vincent ran, every bribe he paid, every law he broke. I've been documenting everything for 6 months, Domenico said quietly. One copy goes to the FBI, another to the New York Times, another to your partners in Chicago who don't know you've been skimming their profits. Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket, but Domenico's men were faster, weapons already drawn. You have a choice, Domenico continued. Walk away from New York entirely. Retire to Florida or Vegas or wherever men like you go to fade away. Or I release everything, and you spend the rest of your life in a cell next to rats who'll turn on you the moment it's convenient. The warehouse was silent except for the sound of Vincent's heavy breathing. His men watched him, waiting for the signal. But Vincent was trapped, and he knew it. You think you've won? Vincent's voice shook with rage. You think you can just leave this life? I already have. Domenico's voice was steel. I have a daughter who deserves better than blood money. I have people in my life who remind me what goodness looks like. And I'm done pretending that power is worth more than peace. Vincent stared at him for a long moment. Then he snatched the folder and stormed out, his men following like shadows. When the warehouse emptied, Maria stepped out from behind the containers. Domenico turned, surprise flickering across his face. You followed me. I needed to know who you really were. And? Do you know now? Maria walked toward him slowly. You chose the hard path. You could have ended him and solidified your power, but you chose evidence over violence, documentation over dominance. She stopped in front of him, her eyes searching his. Yes, now I know exactly who you are. 2 years later, Spring sunshine warmed the backyard of the brownstone in Park Slope. Maria stood at the kitchen window, watching Sophia and Gigi chase each other through the garden, their laughter rising like music over the fence. Osteria Luna had expanded to 3 locations across Manhattan. Maria was now a partner, her name on the business license alongside Domenico's. She had hired 5 other single mothers, women who needed second chances the way she once had. The restaurants weren't just successful, they were transforming lives. Domenico had sold off the last of his illegitimate operations 18 months ago. The transition hadn't been easy. Some of his father's old associates had challenged him. Others had simply disappeared into retirement or prison. But he had built something new, a consulting firm that helped legitimate businesses navigate complex regulations. It was boring compared to his old life. It was also honest. The brownstone they now shared had been his gift on their wedding day 6 months ago. A small ceremony in Prospect Park, just family and close friends, with both girls as flower girls in matching lavender dresses. Maria still caught herself sometimes, waiting for everything to fall apart. Years of survival had taught her not to trust happiness. But then Domenico would come home from work, kiss her forehead, and ask about her day like it was the most important thing in the world. Or Sophia would show her a perfect test score, beaming with pride. Or Gigi would call her Mama Maria without thinking twice. Those moments reminded her that this was real, that she had earned this, that sharing her last meal with a hungry child had opened a door she never knew existed. The back door opened and Domenico stepped out, carrying a tray of lemonade. He set it on the patio table and wrapped his arms around Maria from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about? How far we've come? How different everything is. Better?" Maria turned in his arms, looking up at his face. "So much better. But you know what the strangest part is? I thought success would feel like finally having enough money, enough security. But it doesn't feel like that at all." "What does it feel like?" "It feels like watching our daughters play together without worrying about rent. It feels like going to bed at a reasonable hour. It feels like being seen as a whole person instead of just someone's cheap labor." She paused, her voice softening. "It feels like being loved without having to earn it every single day." Domenico kissed her gently. "You never had to earn it. You just had to let it in." From the garden, Sophia called out, "Mama, Papa, come play with us." They walked out together into the sunshine, toward the sound of children's laughter, toward the life they had built from one simple act of kindness on a rainy night in Brooklyn.